Hi everyone, Stephen Angel here from Voices from the Mausoleum, and we have a special guest with us today, Squall Charlson, author of the new book, Terror Valley. School's Out for Never. I should say this is Terror Valley #1. So, Squall, why don't you tell us a little bit about your book?
Oh, sure. Hi, I'm Squall, and this is a new book series that I am writing called Terror Valley, and I'll read you the blurb, the backside here of book number 1. It's the final day of the school year. Or is it? Freddie and his classroom friends are stoked for the upcoming summer break. Endless hours at the pool, sleepovers every night, staying up late, and of course, no homework. That's what he thought was in his future once 3 o'clock rolled around. But instead, his day started over again, and again, and again. No one believes Freddie, not even his best friends, but the teachers seem meaner each day. The tests are getting harder and harder, and what's worst of all, cafeteria food is especially bad. It's only getting worse with each passing day, and it's being served on repeat for the rest of his life.
Ooh.
Dun, dun,
Love it.
dun.
So
Yeah.
Angel and I were fortunate enough to read an advanced copy of the book. Gave me all the nostalgia for
Oh my
that
God.
YA horror vibe. So Squall, why YA horror? What inspired you to dive into this?
Well, I think horror has always been like my favorite go-to genre. Um, I I remember when I was really young, my mom made a deal with me. I was lucky enough to where she said that if I ever read a book and finished it, she would buy me another one. And so I quickly exhausted a lot of the children's section, and I immediately moved on somehow to Stephen King. And
As one does,
I
yes.
was in
Natural
middle school just,
progression.
like, rocking through these little mass-bound paperbacks of, like, Christine, The Eyes of the Dragon, The Stand, and, it really kinda, helped shape, like, what I really liked growing up, which was, like, those creepy shows. Because 'cause I'm a '90s baby, so, like, we had, Are You Afraid of the Dark,
Mhm,
Erie, Indiana, and, of course, the
Yes.
penultimate, Goosebumps,
mhm.
um and that's always been, like, a really big part of my life, and so when I was really young even, I would come up with stories, and I'd always, like, be like, "Oh, I wanna be a writer, that'd be cool." Kind of
Yeah.
segued into, like, doing movies and films and stuff, and then I don't know how, but I got into, like, YouTube stuff, so, really long roundabout way, I came back to it, and I started writing a book a few years ago, and I just it like, when you reach a certain point where you're like, "I need to take a break, I need to start something new," um
Mhm.
I had just started rereading the Goosebumps, and I was like, "I could write these. This is so much fun." Like, there's so many ideas. Like, I sat up for, like, 4 hours that night just typing out on my notes app all these different ideas and all these different things, and, of course, going on the internet and seeing if Bob Stein had done it already. Um,
Mhm.
Yeah.
and I came up with, like, I wanna say easily, like, 30 to 50 titles. And I was like, "You know what? Let's try it. Let's see if I can do this." And so I started writing this, and about 2 weeks later, I was done. Um,
Wait,
Wow.
2 weeks it took you to write this.
yeah,
Holy moly, that's impressive.
thank you.
I'm so because I was telling Angel, I was like, and I think I even said this to you. I was like, even because there's a lot of timey-wimey stuff, which is a Doctor Who thing for those that don't
Oh,
know.
yeah.
There's a lot of timey-wimey stuff, right? So, all the details that you seem to have had to kind of keep track of, right? So,
A
because there's a
lot.
lot of looping happening.
Yeah.
Um, was that difficult for you, or was that like, how did that factor into your writing process?
I'm a big fan of, like, the time travel, wibbly wobbly stuff.
Yeah.
My favorite book is by an author named Ken Grimwood, and he did this book called Replay. And Replay is about this man who lives a really basic, boring, kind of pathetic life. And he dies like when he's like 45 years old. He has a heart attack. And he wakes up and he's in college again. And he gets to repeat his entire life all over again. And the choices he makes, everything he does, becomes like a millionaire by investing in like Apple. He
Sure.
he's
Right,
got a
right.
kid this time around, like, he's got a family that loves him, but that same time hits and he dies again, and it repeats over and over again. And it's such a beautiful tale, and it's such a wide scope of like what all could go different. But my favorite parts were like those little things that they did keep consistent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They would later take that book and make it into Groundhog's Day, which has not so much as the depth, but that's always been like on my mind is just like time travel and like weaving, and like Back to the Future did a lot of that, especially with Back to the Future 2 of like what do we know? How do we kind of interpret that? And so like coming out with this idea, I just immediately could see the beginning, middle, and end. And I wrote the first day. So the whole book he replays and he repeats the same day over and over again.
Mhm.
And I really thought about everything that I wanted to do in the beginning, middle, and end. And I tried to combine all that into one day. I tried to make it so that everything that I wanted to do could potentially foreseeably happen in that 8 hours that he's at school before it
Sure.
repeats.
Mhm.
And then I stripped it away to all of like, well, what would he actually experience, day one? Okay, well, what's going to be different about number two? Well, he's kind of like, oh, this is similar, to
Yeah.
the point where
Mhm.
he's actively trying to change and, alter the
Mhm.
course. Like, there's a character named Coach G, and Coach catches, his friend on his phone and,
Mhm.
makes him, uh, they get in trouble.
Yeah.
And so he tries to stop that, and things are changing around him.
Yeah.
And honestly, like I think the hardest part about doing all of it was just that I wrote the first chapter, which you'll read a couple times in the book, of him in class that morning.
Mhm.
And every time I would go back to copy it and paste it into the next part and then change it up as I went, I would always like modify or tweak something. So then I'd have to go back and modify, 3 different variations, 5 different variations. By
Right.
the end of it, they had like 6 or 7, and I was like, okay, hopefully, this is all good now.
Yeah.
Right.
But it was just so much fun to like figure all that out and come up with how it all fits together.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
And
mean,
I think it's interesting too, because like when you see or read books or you watch movies with these themes, they can get really complex. And
Mhm.
there's a lot of components and a lot of things that can go into it on the adult side of stories like this. So to see some of these complexities so well thought out, but simplified in enough where they, this age range can understand it, but it does not lose any of the depth. It doesn't lose any of the level of effectiveness that it has. I thought I was like, blow. Like I when I sat down, I read it in 2 halves. I read half of the first half, and then the next day I read the second half. And I was just like, not that I don't read a ton of YA stuff, or, obviously, like I tend to lean more towards the adult stuff, but, being able to be so engrossed in the story as a 35-year-old woman with a family was like so bizarre to me. But it was like, I was having so much fun, and I'm with Steve on this, like the nostalgia for story. I mean, I grew up on, I didn't go to Stephen King like a lot of people did. I went to Christopher Pike was who I went to after I did
I
Goosebumps.
love Pike.
I
I'll
love
have to
Christopher
say
Pike.
my
So yeah,
but
so Christopher Pike was, more teen, than,
Mhm.
he wasn't writing, but like, yeah, like this, there was I don't remember who wrote the Shivers books. Was that was somebody different, right? There was like a set series of books that was just called Shivers. It was like Goosebumps and then
Mhm.
Shivers. Anyway, I read a bunch of that stuff, and this was like, it was just so fun. That was, but I just, the fact that it doesn't lose any of the depth, even though it is put in words for, a younger audience, I was really impressed with that.
Well, thank you. Yeah.
Yeah.
The other book I was working on is a lot higher of a level, and so to kind of jump into this, it was so much easier, and it was so much more fun that I could like,
Yeah.
knock out like 5 chapters in an afternoon rather than, sit on one all day.
Yeah.
A lot more fun.
Yeah. So why 5th grade to tell a story like this? Right. So why are we meeting our character kind of at the end of his 5th grade year?
5th grade, I don't know about you two, but 5th grade was very important for me. And it's a time that I look back on not quite so fondly, but like I remember a lot around it. And I remember that a
Mhm.
lot of things that like I decided or did around that time, I'm talking like 4th, 5th, 6th grade,
Sure.
um, changed the course, my trajectory in school and friends and a lot of things. And I currently live in Kansas City, and when I first moved here, one of my first jobs that I had was I was doing fundraisers at schools.
Mhm.
And we would do 2-week programs where we would go to elementary schools, and I would, go to classrooms for like a little 15-minute segments. We do a little fun, lesson, hand out prizes, and you just get to meet all these wonderful kids, all these, talented, brilliant, like funny people that you're just like, you're a fully formed person. Was I like this when I was your age? Like,
Yeah.
it blows my mind, like, how smart these kids are, and
Yeah.
it's just always been, like, after that, like, in the back of my mind is, like, what would their story be like? Like, what would hers be like? What would his, and
Yeah.
that's really another big, like, pushing point for this is I still have a lot of those connections here in KC with those schools, and, um, like, the title or the name of the school that Freddie attends was a real school that I worked at, and
Wow.
it was my favorite school because they were so compassionate and they were so, like, encouraging of everybody that walked through those doors, and so when I finished this and I knew that this was gonna, like, come out, I, emailed the principal and I was like, "Hey, Mr. Korb, like, hey, I wrote this book," and he's like, "Hey, that's great. I don't work there anymore."
Oh.
But I tracked him down and he was, he let me like film in his school, like we did like a little commercial, but like the
Aw.
librarian there, like I told her and I was like, "Hey, how can I get this book in the hands of like these kids in the, district?" And she said, "Drop them off." So, I mean,
That's
that's
awesome.
that's how amazing
Aw,
like the faculty is
that
in
is
Kansas
great.
City here.
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
Well, no wonder why you wouldn't want to name it after that school then.
Yeah. Shout out to Briarwood.
Oh.
There's two of them in KC, so they can both take the credit. They'll never know which is the real one.
So you're hitting the ground running, you're getting the books in libraries. So I know your book is on Amazon, right?
Mhm.
So it's physical and digital on Amazon.
Mhm.
How else are you getting the word out there?
We did a lot of research on this. So my wife helped me a lot. She's an editor, which I lucked out there. Uh,
Yeah, that gets expensive.
yeah, and honestly, it's so fun because she gets to come home, and the days that I get to, work from home or have a day off and I get to write, I'll read to her what I wrote, and I'll never forget like the very first time that I read her something. When we first started dating, she told me that she had always wanted to marry an author. And I was like, "Oh, that's funny. I always wanted to be an author." And so she said the first time that I read her from my other book that I put on pause, she said she was so relieved that she didn't have to lie to me for the rest of our marriage. I was like, "All right, great. That's
Thank you
probably
for
one of
that
the best
compliment.
compliments I could get."
That's great.
That is great.
But she did
But
so much
yeah.
research of like how to, push it out there, like what would be the best for me. Because a lot of this really also started because I had already, done the foundations and I had already like figured out like what I want to do next, even. Like I'm almost done with the second book. Like
Yeah.
I don't know how many I want to do or how long it'll go on for, but
Yeah.
I just had this idea and I reached out to Scholastic and I was like, "Hey, uh, Bob's about 80 years old now. I don't know how many more of these goosebumps, like what is the future of that? Like trying to like, segue like if there's other like ghostwriters that he perchance uses or like
Yeah.
any other people that could lend their name and like create a sort of anthology series together." And that didn't go anywhere. So I was just like, I'll just release it myself, put it on Amazon. Maybe they'll read it and they'll be like,
Heck
let's
yeah.
put him back on the phone.
What
It's
they
so
could have
fun.
had.
I know.
But speaking of your wife, I know she gets sort of a special shout out in the book specifically.
Hmm. I named one of the characters Lauren after her.
Oh, I didn't know that. Did you know that, Steve?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
You kept that. That's oh my
I want
god.
a genuine reaction from Angel for that
Now
one
I
because
have to go. Oh
it's
yeah.
so sweet.
Steve knows I'm a huge sap, so I'm like, oh, that's so cute.
the first time I read her the chapter with Lauren, the first chapter, I guess, she just looked at me and she goes, "I don't have blonde hair."
Oh,
I was like, well, to be honest, like to be fair, when I first met you, you were cosplaying Sailor Venus, and you did have blonde hair, so
You
that's
did
kind
have
of like my
blonde hair.
headcanon for you. So, you know,
Oh my god, I
There you
love
go.
that. Oh,
And with
that's
all the time you
cute.
want me, it's a multiverse version of her. And then this universe, she has blonde hair.
yeah,
So, but that's awesome. And she is the editor for this
yes,
book, right? Which is
That's awesome.
very cool.
yes.
Yeah.
Lauren is my editor, and a shout out to Marcelo Biot for this amazing, amazing cover.
So cute. I love the cover.
It is
I worked with
really, really
him.
cool.
I did a TV show a few years ago during like pandemic times,
Mhm.
and I commissioned him to do like a poster. And so he drew me and like all these other characters from these Japanese shows, and it was great. Like I love that poster. It's great. And I put the word out there. I was like, hey, is there any artists out there that could do like a more very vibrant pastel, even, color of like that kind of like, looks like actually painted? And he was like, I'd like to try. So I was like, yeah, let's do it. And when I tell you the very first like rough drawing I got of this, I knew I made the right choice. And watching him
Awesome.
breathe life into this, amazing.
Oh yeah, no, the skull and the bell is fantastic. I love also how ominous the cutlery is.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, it's just like
Real
sticking up out
intimidating.
of it.
Now that you've read the book, how true to the source do you think this cover fits? Because he only got like the blurb. He got the
I
blurb in
mean,
like the
Really
first few
true,
chapters.
because
Yeah.
I mean, the whole lot. I mean, the whole lot. Well, speak because the lunch and the food and that whole part of it. What I love in this, without going to spoilers, and we're going to do spoilers, kind of a little bit, well, a little
Fun.
conversation later on, but
Mhm.
how you hit on so many of just your typical school fears of like the mystery lunch, the intimidating coach, the pop quiz. You hit on all of these kind of
Mhm.
key fears
Yeah.
that I think like all, if not, most of us have at this time in our life.
Yeah.
But so
I was
spot on.
thinking, as far as like the cover, though, I think that there's a lot of times in the cafeteria pieces, though, where there's a lot of processing happening. Like a lot of the big story, think through things, where Freddie's like thinking about things and the progress and like whatever that moment is for him. A lot of those moments happen during this scene. So I think it's perfect, because I think you've got the representation of time and not so great time, right? And then like the big thinking scenes, a lot of them happened during some of those cafeteria moments. So
Mhm.
I thought it was perfect. And then the other thing too, of course, is how capturing, like if you see this out, you're going to look at it. And that's that's
Super
very
iconic.
important. You're going to see this, you're going to think Goosebumps, you're going to think, oh, I need to look at that. It's very bright. So, I mean, I think it's like a 10 out of 10. Like, I think it's perfect, especially having read the whole thing now. I love it.
Thank you. It's funny you pointed out like the lunchroom, the thinking pieces. Like I did all my best thinking in two places, and they're both represented in the book: lunch and the bathroom.
Oh
Yeah.
man. Well, I was at that point in my life. I feel like most of the pivotal like moments of my childhood happened in that kind of in the cafeteria lunch sort of setting.
Sure.
And kind of very similar to the school in the book. I mean, my school kind of had that gym cafeteria stage combo
Mhm.
situation.
Mhm.
I
Very cool.
didn't grow up with that, but I saw that in almost every school I served at, and I was like, oh, that's interesting.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And it's in the back of my brain now. Like that's how I think of cafeterias.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And hiding out at the nurse's office. That was a
Oh, yes.
I didn't write Freddie very much after myself. I think he has my voice and some of my wit, but like a lot of the things he does, like the nurses thing, was straight out of what I used to do. So
You're not alone. That was
No.
like, oh, I don't want to be here. Let me just go see if the bed in the nurse's office is free.
Yeah.
fun
Yeah.
fact: the original title that I was working with until the story completely changed was called Cult of the Lunch Ladies. So
I want to see that version.
I
I mean,
love
maybe-
that.
You know,
when I tell you I have like 100 titles, I'm not
I love
lying.
that. That
maybe
would
there's
have
a
been
little
so
more to the
cute.
mystery meat. Yeah.
Oh yeah, I have Mystery Meat Mystery was another one.
That's clever. I love that. Cult of the
But
Cafeteria
without
Worm.
spoiling, I do love how you tied that into the narrative.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I know we kind of talked about sort of what inspired you. Being that this is kind of a horror channel, I mean, what are some of your? I want kind of know from you, like, what are some of your favorite horror influences, just in general, across
Mhm.
the board? What attracts you to horror?
I've never been scared of watching a movie. I think the closest I've ever gotten was Nightmare on Elm Street, and that was because I was maybe 9 or 10, and I, bought the movie on VHS at a garage sale, and my grandpa found out and confiscated it from me almost immediately, and so, of course, at, like, 11 o'clock at night, I'm army crawling into his room to grab the tape and then to take it downstairs and watch it in the basement, and, I think that's the closest I've ever been to being scared because to get to the basement part, we had to go through like an unfinished,
Oh.
section where there's all these pipes and like
Hmm.
in your brain, there's like steam shooting out. And I'm just like, guess I'm sleeping down here. And ever since that, I've been like chasing that sort of high that I had. Like The Shining, I think is another prime example of like something that I was so bored with it. I was so like, I don't
What?
care about this for so many years, but I would keep coming back to it again and again and again. And it wasn't until I was in college, like, I think it was like maybe my 10th or 11th time watching it. It was at like 2 o'clock in the morning, and I just sat straight up and I realized, oh my God, the main character isn't anybody in the family, it's the hotel. And I was just like, and like you get a lot of that depth with horror movies because a
Yeah.
lot of people go into it expecting something that's just gonna, yeah, you know,
Surface
and
level. Yep.
if you're smart, like you can really introduce a lot of engaging subjects because people are at their most vulnerable when they're, scared of turning the next page or when they're scared of
Mhm.
what's going to jump out at them. Like you look at a lot of like recent movies like Talk to Me, um,
Yeah.
that just really elevates that sort of level. Like, have you seen the movie Host? It's all on
Yeah.
Skype.
Yep.
Oh
Like,
yeah.
there's just
That's
so many like
brilliant.
it
Mhm.
it's such a I hate to say like a cheap medium, but I mean that because you can produce it super cheap. You can have 10, 20, 100 ideas and pay for them with the cost of like one Marvel movie. And,
Yeah.
you know,
It's
with
true.
one
Principle.
hit, yeah, with one hit in that bunch, you'll pay for everything. Like
Yep.
it's nuts. It's how Blumhouse like, got its entire foundation.
Yep.
And I'm just so in love with like what it does to people and how it makes different people react. Like my coworker, who was maybe the second person to hear the story of School's Out for Never, I read her the first chapter of the next book, and she's like, "That's interesting. Where's it going?" And so I like told her like the creepiest visual because in my brain, Terror Valley, I wanted to start it off a little bit lighter and
Mhm.
slowly crank it up until I find where maybe it goes a little too far. And I read her one of the visuals that I had in a later chapter, and she was just like, I don't know if I'm gonna sleep tonight. I live on a top floor. And I was like, sweet.
That's a compliment.
You're an adult. I'm sure the kids will love it too.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's another thing. So going to these schools and talking to these kids, like everybody that I ever see in these schools are always talking down to them, are always trying to like talk on their level. And it's
Yeah.
like, no, you walk in exactly who you are and you talk to them exactly like you would talk to, you, Steve, or you, Angel, and they
Yeah.
will respect you 1,000 times over. And like I said, like they're fully formed people, even in fourth and fifth grade. Like they know so much about the world because of the internet, and they're so, adaptive to different thoughts and different things. And they're just so hungry for, fun, new experiences. And I don't think a lot of them, read anymore. Like every school I was at, I would always try to hang out in the library and I'd be like, hey, have you read this? Oh, what do you like? Oh, yeah, I got a book for you. I was like the librarian's favorite person just because like I feel like I could leave a school and a handful of kids would find a new book that interests
Aw.
them and gets them hooked on reading. And that's what I really want for Terror Valley and any other future titles I do is I want this to be someone's favorite book or this to be the reason that somebody else reads like crazy because there's so much good stuff out there. You just need to find the right first entry point, and
Yeah.
horror is a very good way to do that.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And there's certainly such a need for YA horror in general.
Agree. Yeah, I agree.
You know, like my cousin-in-law, she's a librarian for the New York public system. And she was saying it's like it's either Goosebumps or Five Nights at Freddy's.
Or Minecraft. Like Minecraft has some spooky creepypasta books.
Oh
True,
yeah.
true.
You literally go from picture books to like vampire romance novels. Like there's not a whole lot in between.
No. No, not at all.
Well, I also don't want you to sell yourself short. I mean, there is some material in the first Terror Valley that does sort of get there in terms of the horror, right? I mean, like,
Mhm.
I guess the benefit of it not being scholastics is like you also don't have someone telling you,
That's true.
I don't think you should do that, or I don't, you know, that's not appropriate,
That's
right?
true.
I'm always leading with, no matter what I put in this book, kids have seen and heard or maybe even done 10 times worse.
Yeah.
And I just want to create, a fun way to experience that without any of the danger or any of the, like traumatic side effects of having, to deal with a lot of real world issues.
Yeah.
And that's why Goosebumps was so successful, is because almost every book isn't really about the dangers of the world. It's about the dangers of basically growing up, like the
Yeah.
monsters under the bed, and how to tackle that. And you always have really strong characters that come through. And
Yeah.
that's what I love about that. And that's hopefully, what I can put into these as well.
Yeah.
What do you hope people feel when they read your book?
I want people to be excited. I want them to like want more, and I don't mean that as in like I want the story to continue. Like I said earlier, I want people, especially a younger audience, to have an entry point, an entry point into so many other possibilities. And I know that this book probably won't clock, a lot of people's top 10, whatever. But if this book is their first favorite that then jumps them into something that they'll enjoy for the rest of their life,
Yeah.
that's all I can really hope for. Is I just want people to be excited to read and just know that there's so many possibilities. Like I try to literally, my experience with like filmmaking and doing screenplays and such is that you try to fit under 200 or 120 pages an entire cohesive story. And that's what I want to do with these. I want these to be quick reads that are like a movie in your head that you can literally sit down and in an afternoon experience, 1,000 different things and come away with it with wanting more.
I don't know how you could top an answer like that. That was great.
Yeah. I also
That was
just
like
to add to
Captain
that,
America.
I think you achieved I think you achieved that. Like I feel like, I'm a very slow reader. So it takes me forever to read adult books because they're massive. And so like it's really great because I think you also get this interesting sense of like accomplishment because you're like, okay, like, but it was like it did feel like a movie. It felt like you could see these things like this makes like this could be a TV show, like, and this is the pilot or, whatever. And yeah, I mean, I feel like you achieved so far everything that you wanted to, I would say. I think it's super engaging. I'm going to take this one to the other kids in my life and see, like, I think they would absolutely love it. And I'd be really curious because one of them is in the 5th grade, like how because it deals with a lot of stuff that's like you said, it isn't just that, surface level, like scary stuff. There's a lot going on. Like I messaged both of you when I got to a certain point in the book and I'm like, why am I this old, upset and crying about this story? Like this shouldn't be, but it's because there's so much reality in it. It's great. And it kind of speaks to what you were saying earlier, Squall, about like what makes horror so interesting in the first place is because there's so many layers to it. There's so many things you can get in. I think that you've definitely accomplished the things that you're seeking to accomplish with this.
Thank you. Yeah. My mother-in-law, she was a 4th grade teacher.
Oh.
And she was the 3rd person to read this. And I gave her my Kindle so she could read it. And we were like 20 minutes into Oppenheimer and I saw her still trying to like read it under her jacket.
Oh.
Okay, cool. And she has some friends that are 5th grade teachers. And so I'm going to give them both a copy and they're going to do a class reading. And it's so great having like I don't want to
Awesome.
say like test subjects, but like, you know, like
Yeah.
you literally have all this at
Yeah.
your disposal of like all these kids that will tell you what they like, what they don't like.
That's awesome.
Like, honestly, I could walk into a school now, and if they've read one of these books, I can just ask them, what scares you?
Yeah.
Cool. I'm
Yeah.
gonna turn that into a book. You don't
Mhm.
like sharks? Well, what about sharks that can come out on land? There's an idea, you know, like
Right.
they'll get you any way they can. Like
Yeah.
that's what I
I know
like.
Angel would like that one. She likes sharks.
Angel is irrationally afraid of sharks. Irrationally afraid of sharks. So yeah.
So anything else you want us to know either about Terror Valley, what's coming up for the series? Do you want to tease the second book? Or any other projects you got going on, or where people can find you, all that good stuff.
Awesome. Yeah. So if you not watch, what am I talking about? I'm so used to my YouTube brain that everything's watched now. But if you happen to pick up a copy of School's Out for Never and read through it, on the back you'll find on every book I'm going to put the title of the next one so that it kind of keeps me in line with
Oh yeah, accountability.
and yeah, because it's like, hey, you never released You're Not My Sensei. Where is it? I'm gonna feel bad. But that's the second book, and it is about this girl named Remy who moves to a new town, which you'll find in a lot of these stories. I didn't want it to be the first one, you know. And her hobby is karate, as the title might suggest. And the only karate dojo in this town is run by a guy who is so, I don't know how to phrase this without giving too much away. Basically, he has karate zombies. And that's all I'll say. That's all I will say. And she's got to fight against all that, and hopefully she comes out unscathed.
That sounds fun.
That sounds so fun.
In my 3 favorite genres, I wanted to cover in the first 3 books. So the first one's, ooh, what did I just do?
Oh, we got balloons.
What did I do? I did. How did I do that?
What was that?
I didn't even know that was a thing.
Wait, what?
I was doing 3, whatever.
I didn't push anything. I have no idea.
That is really funny. I love that. Is that
we're celebrating talking about more books?
Yeah. My 3
speechless.
favorite genres were time travel,
Yeah.
Mhm.
like action karate, like if you've seen the Cobra Kai TV series,
Yeah.
chef's kiss. And then my third one will be camp horror stories, and so that's going to be the third one.
Ooh,
And
love it.
I got to change the title because as we watched more Friday the 13th, I was like, oh, so that's where I got the name Camp Blood from. Okay. Maybe got to change this way to Camp Blood to something else. I don't know.
Oh, it could be a throwback. I don't think people are going to think you're stealing it.
Maybe.
It's an
That
intentional
one's fun,
reference.
Awesome. But yeah,
so where can people find you?
so I'm on Twitter under my name without a space, Squall Charlson. I've really kind of reclused myself a little bit more just because you have so many channels open, you have so many things you're doing. Like I privated almost all of my YouTube videos, so you probably can't find me there. There's still a few up, but Twitter is primarily where I will be. Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Squall, for coming on to talk about your
thank
book.
you.
Thanks for having me. This has been great.
Yeah, and we're going to have sort of a part 2 where we're going to talk spoilers, do a little more of a deeper dive into the story, maybe more balloons will happen. I don't know. That I'm still speechless.
I've never seen that before. We use
I
StreamYard all the time.
Something.
It was just you, Squall. You know, like StreamYard just was like, I'm gonna bring out the balloons.
That was
Could have waited until the end.
All right, and so Terror Valley, School's Out for Never is available now, digital and physical on Amazon.
Mhm.
And that's it, right?
That's it for now, just
Okay.
because makes it easier. Everyone's got Amazon something.
That's
Most
it.
people go to Amazon anyway.
Yeah, I don't need a monkey around Barnes and Noble Nook. Huh?
What? All right. Well, make sure to check it out, guys, and we'll catch you next time.
See.